For those of y'all that may not recognize her, this is Lindsey Paxton. It's Miss Donna Quinn's daughter. That was nice of you. Can the rest of you say hi, Lindsey? Hi, Lindsey. Thank you. Now half of you want to say, I'm an alcoholic. Don't you? That's not today.
It's nice to meet you, though.
Take off. Hold your mic up.
On August 14th, Chance and I will celebrate our 1-year anniversary. For those of you that have been married for many years, that probably seems like nothing. The first year is supposed to be the easiest, right? At least that's what we are told to expect. A year of love, getting to know one another, learning each other's habits, likes and dislikes, and that's exactly what it has been. Just not in the fashion that we expected. Our story took a turn on a rough road 2 weeks before Christmas. The month of December was a tough time for both of us. I had headaches daily that eventually progressed into migraines that caused me to completely shut down. I didn't want to go anywhere, see anyone, much less get out of bed. This went on until a random Wednesday night that was especially bad. Picture me being quite pathetic, vomiting, moaning around until Chance decides that whether I like it or not, we're going to the ER. Once there and after the ER doctors had given me medicine to settle my stomach and a CAT scan had been performed, a neurosurgeon stepped into our hospital room and informed us that there was a mass on my brain, and it wasn't supposed to be there. A day and a half later, all 3 sets of my parents, and yes, I did say 3 sets, it gets a little bit complicated. All 3 sets of my parents had traveled from Texas to Florida. We were stationed at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. And we hadn't seen any of our family since we got married. And even under the circumstances, I was pretty happy about getting to see, my mama. At this point, my doctors were still sticking with the it's a mass story, but informed us that it's putting too much pressure on my brain and it has to come out. So the following day, I have major brain surgery, which oddly enough is the first surgery that I've ever had. There's something to be said for doing a big, When I'm coherent enough to carry on a conversation, my neurosurgeon comes in to speak with me about what they now know. I have brain cancer. I have a brain cancer that's called glioblastoma multiforme. And the fun thing about this type of cancer is that 1 in every 100,000 people will get it. That means you guys are good. I've got it. But it also targets men that are over 50. So whenever they told us it was that, it was pretty shocking because I'm a girl and I was 20. So this is where we're standing now. Is I've got old people cancer, old men cancer. The surgery broke my body and my spirit. I had no feeling on the left side of my body. I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand. I couldn't even bathe myself. But as soon as I was able, our first priority was to get me home and to MD Anderson. Coming home to Texas is where my real journey began. I was raised to be a strong person, and thus far in my life, it has served me well. I've been independent, proud of most of my choices, and unafraid to take on whatever life has to throw my way. I was raised to be a proud person, and thus far in life, it has served me well. I've held my head high, kept my shoulders pulled back, always self-assured of my worth. I was raised to trust and depend on my family, and thus far in life, it has served me well. I know that no matter what, Mama has a shoulder to cry on. Daddy can fix anything that is broken. My family will be there to support me. My husband will still be my best friend, and no matter what anyone says, I could still go home. But y'all, sometimes the bottom falls out. When I had the first tumor removal, I used a saying that my granddaddy's known for. He said, "Get your boots on, girl, you got some hills to climb." I wasn't going to let cancer slow me down or ruin my good time while we were back home in Texas. Then our first trip to MD Anderson went from just an appointment to a very serious infection to a second tumor removal to another 2 weeks in the hospital and starting the recovery process all the way over again. Laying in my hospital bed, I was disheartened. It was so difficult to be surrounded by my family and their words of support. "You look so good. You look so much better than you did after your last surgery." I didn't look good. My face was swollen. My body was bloated. And my recent weight gain from the steroids disgusted me. I didn't feel good, and if anything, I felt exponentially worse. I was angry with every single one of them. How easy it was for them to tell me how I look or how I feel when they have no idea. How lovely it must be to walk out of the hospital at the end of the day. How nice to be able to get up and go to the restroom without somebody having to be there to help you walk. I thought my prayers were unheard. I thought that I was being punished by God, that He had abandoned me when I needed Him the most. Every day was so hard. The pain was constant, and every day I allowed my faith to slip a tiny bit more. With every tiny slip came anger, hurt, doubt, fear towards my family, towards God, toward doctors and nurses and anyone else that I could think of. The person that I was raised to be was slowly being eaten away by negativity and fear of the unknown until a random MRI. I had an MRI scheduled for 7:30 one evening. And blame the powers that be, it was pushed back until about 10:30 when they finally wheeled me down. My parents had left for the night, so it was just Chance and I in the waiting area. I didn't speak to him while we waited, but handed him my wedding ring before I went back. It felt ominous. Normally, I fall asleep within seconds of going into the machine, but not this time. My fingers kept running over the place where my ring normally sits, and suddenly I was overcome with an intense anger. It wasn't fair for Chance and I. The years of marriage seemed like a hopeless dream. Having children, traveling, growing old together, all of our plans were just gone. I began to talk with God, blaming Him for my sickness, for punishing me, for destroying my life. All of the anger that was built up inside of me was directed at God. I poured my anger out, the betrayal I felt, all of the hurt that was eating me. And then I remembered Matthew 11:28. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Y'all, I broke down. I cried out to God. I begged for forgiveness for doubting His power. I admitted that I was not strong enough to do this on my own. I declared that my pride was useless and meaningless. I laid down me and my way of trying to fix everything. Right then and there, I told my Savior that I wasn't able, but I was ready to hand it over to Him and let Him take care of it. When the tech pulled me out of the MRI machine, he saw the tears flowing from my face and asked if I was in pain. My answer was simple: not anymore. Dear friends, I was an overly confident, prideful, vain, self-reliant person, and all of that was shaken by illness. But it didn't shake God. Here today at Bar None, I stand before you and I feel surrounded by love from people that took care of us, prayed for us, gave us a place to live, gave me a song or a few words that made me realize I'm never alone in this, that I'm always taken care of by our family here and by our Father in heaven. So, since the second surgery, I've had 2 more. And hopefully the fourth one was the last. This is not my real hair. This is my real hair. The hardest part of this, other than my anger with God, was vanity. Losing my hair was the hardest part. But you know what? He knew it was going to happen, and He took care of me. So this is what I want to ask of you. I want you to not waste another day of your life thinking that things are better when you're in control. Don't waste another day of your life without knowing how much better it is when you let go and let God. Worry, fear, hurt, anger, pride, shame, vanity. Let go and let God. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." He is waiting for you to call out to him. Thank you.
It's the first time since God called me to pastor that I was going to repeat a message. Because I didn't have the energy, the time, or the effort put into one for today. And I was going to re-preach what I taught Wednesday night because it was so powerful. It was God's anointing, but I know now why it started Wednesday night. Because in John chapter 6, verse 16 says, when evening came, his disciples were down onto the sea. They got into a boat, and it started across the sea of Capernaum, and it was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because of a strong wind that was blowing, and when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat. They were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they were glad to take him in to the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land with which they were going. I ain't going to preach to you because if you ain't heard a message already today, you ain't got the abilities to hear one. I want you to know that all of us find ourselves at different times in a boat. And I want you to recognize that the power that is against the boat is the wind. 3 things about wind you need to know. Number 1, you can't see it. Number 2, you don't know where it came from or what it's doing. Number 3, you can't control it. See, so many of us have been convinced that the reason the battle that we're in is what we're of our own makings or it's our own deal. But sometimes it's just the wind, and the wind is a power that you can't overcome. But you notice the second thing about it. Jesus said, as he come walking on the water, first of all, they didn't recognize him. They didn't recognize him. And when you don't recognize him, listen, don't worry, the disciples didn't even recognize him. When you don't recognize him and you get frightened, he will say, "I'm with you." He did not come to take you out of the boat, but he came to get in your boat. He came to get in your boat. Thank you so much. There's a lot of people that need to get him in the boat. Revelations 3:20, "Behold, I stand at the door and I knock, and anyone who hears my voice, who hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him, and I will eat with him, and he will eat with me." Listen to me. When Jesus talks about eating, he's talking about a fellowship. When he said anyone, he's talking about you individually. This is a letter written to the church. But he's saying inside of that church, there's a lot of people that ain't ate with me in a long time. And if any one of you, sister, you open the door. That song you sing that says, "I don't know how to move on." This is how you move on. He is how you move on. The wind is tough, and the wind is blowing right in your face, and it is a power that you can't recognize. It is a power that you can't control. It is a power that you can't do nothing with. You can't even see it. You ain't recognizing him. His name is Jesus, and he's coming by you. And if you'll just listen, he'll say, "Hey," first thing he done was calm them down. "Hey, it's okay." And then he took their fears away, and they asked him in the boat, and immediately, they were where they needed to be. Some of us been paddling the same boat for a long time.